Well, the pandemic was hard on restaurants in particular. So how was walkabout in the two locations done during the pandemic and since you've been able to reopen?
We had a very tough time until the PPP money came through. There was a period where we didn't know if we were going to be able to hang on to Leavenworth or not. When you sign leases and you give, personal guarantees, they're going to continue to expect a payment to come through. Thankfully, down in Wenatchee, we own that building down there. If it hadn't have been for the PPP money, we would have had 63 employees between both restaurants out on the streets, restaurants closed, never to reopen. Because once you get on that steep of a hill, it's very hard to get over that and then try and reopen on the other side. It cost us tens of thousands of dollars to reopen when we finally did. And Wenatchee was shut down for about 6 months and Leavenworth was shut down for about 9 months. When you have all these employees looking at you saying, boss, we need to make a decision here. What are you going to do? Well, I'm going to do what's best for my employees every time. That's just the way that I work. Always pay my employees first, pay everybody else second. It took a couple months for several of my employees to even get their first unemployment check. So that, and then add the stimulus money on top of that, made it very difficult to compete with the government when it came to, are you ready to come back to work? No, we're making way more money not working. You can't compete when the government's just throwing dollars at everybody. We brought back every one of those employees that had to be locked out for, lack of better words, had to be locked out. We brought back every one of them. And then people were so excited to get back into a semi-normal lifestyle that we actually added more people to the crew. And so we were able to hire additional people as well. So it was a tough decision to make, but knowing that they were taken care of by the unemployment system is exactly what that system is designed for.
Well, your business took about $710,000 in payroll protection program loans that have since been forgiven, based on what I've been able to find. Is that accurate?
That part is accurate, but we were able to send back about $148,000 of the PPP that we were unable to use in the time period. So that grant worked perfectly rather than being a loan. And then sending back that $148,000, I think it was, made it so that could be sent out to other businesses that still weren't able to get up and running. So the program worked perfectly, and being able to have those forgiven as grants was just a godsend, because there's no way we would have been able to pay that money back. And that made it so that even when we were reopening and not as busy as we needed, my managers would say our staff is way too high, and I'd say that's okay. Let them go ahead and stay on the clock. Let them go ahead and continue to work, even though we don't particularly need that many people right now. Their paycheck is covered by the payroll protection program. So it did exactly what it was intended to do for my two restaurants.
You must have been in a difficult position, Shon, being a small government conservative, hoping that your employees are taken care of by unemployment and taking money from the federal government that allowed you to maintain some status quo while also staying closed. It must have been kind of a struggle.
Oh, it was a very tough struggle in my head, because here I am with my hand out against the exact thing that I preach about of big government, small government, and letting people and businesses do what they're designed to do with that freedom was very hard to accept. And so I had to get over that really quickly and say, we're in a situation where it is a matter of life and death, survival for our businesses and for longevity of my employees to be able to have a place to return to.
Speaking of rescue money or money that was offered out by the government during COVID, the ARPA funds, the American Rescue Plan funds, the county has received about almost $15 million. And there's $4 million which commissioners have to decide how to distribute to go to things like nonprofits and small businesses. Now, some towns and municipalities on ideological lines have rejected that money, saying, we can't use it, we don't want to be beholden, take it back. This decision will be made before the new commissioner comes in, but if the county has another chance to accept that kind of largesse for a financial or economic crisis, do you accept it? Absolutely accept it.
It's money that we've all paid into it, whether it be through taxes or sales tax. We've all paid money into this, and I've had a few friends give me a good ribbing about accepting that money. And it is, in my mind, it's more of a tax refund or a tax rebate for the money that we have paid into. Being in business this long, we have contributed millions and millions and millions of dollars to the tax base. So getting some of that money back, same idea with the county as well. If the needs are there and the money is available, we sure better grab it and go for every dollar that we can get. We don't know what the future holds. I believe we're heading for a recession, and if we have nest eggs that we're able to sit on, granted they all have strings attached to them as to where you can spend that money, but as long as you have that nest egg and have that backup money, hopefully the programs can continue.
Another financial issue we should talk about is one that arose during the 2018 campaign. And this is the issue of personal and business taxes that were owed by yourself and by your businesses. From what I gather, about $77,000 now has been paid back to the IRS from Walkabout as of March of last year, and almost $140,000 in personal income tax. Has your IRS tax debt now been discharged? Because that was an issue 4 years ago.
Yeah, it was 4 years ago, and that was a tough decision to make as well. Back in that period, I think you remember the economy was in such tough shape that a lot of businesses were just flat out closing down. And we chose to pay our employees, always pay your employees, is a lesson I learned from my father. And I've maintained that all the way through my career at the restaurants. So we had to make a very difficult decision. And when you do that, you have to think about what are the consequences going to be from that. Well, we realized that we're going to get late penalties and we're going to get interest. And those are two of the things that kept adding to that balance and making it a very, very hard nut to crack. Thankfully, once you go on a payment plan, whether it be a mortgage or a car payment, as soon as you go on a payment plan, you can at least get your arms around it. We were very fortunate to be able to pay them off in full and pay them early, all penalties and all interest and everything, pay them off early. So it was a very tough decision to make at the time, but it was the right decision to make so that employees could still cover their debts at home and feed their families.
You're an active Facebook user, Shon, and many people are. One of the things you like to do is repost memes that you find. Here is one of Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, with long hair in his younger days. It says, "Let's go, Brenda." And this was posted during the trucker shutdown of the Canadian capital back in early part of this year. There's a number of memes like this that I could point to. Running for office, did you ever think, is my use of Facebook appropriate? Are these things that I'm putting out there going to offend potential voters? Anything like that?
There are always times that we think about how is this going to affect the future. And I made a policy when I ran for office the second time that I would not go back and scrub any of my social media. At the time that you put these memes out or someone sends it to you and you resend it, you repost it, it's funny at the time. And yes, all of them have messages and all of them do share some of my inner feelings. Otherwise, I would not have the guts to post it out there. So I stand behind all my posts and say at that period, Let's Go Brandon was the big one for the United States. Well, Let's Go Brenda was the big one for the Canadian truckers and how they were addressing their government grievances. And that's what we should be allowed to do in our First Amendment, is express what it is that we think and what we feel and have the ability to say that without being punished for it. So it's a freedom of speech for me.
Understood.
Yeah.
But do you feel like when you are commissioner, if you are commissioner, that you are representing your county or your district in a different way than you are when you're representing yourself as an individual person on Facebook? Do you feel like you would still feel free to look at a meme and without thinking twice?
Absolutely. If it comes on the letterhead from the county, of course, there's going to have to be some discretion used. But in our own personal lives, we still need to have that freedom guaranteed to us, that we can post what we want, say what we want, protest what we want. And I know that there's people that will protest against me and the stances that I take in my life. And I'm fine with that. If I disagree with somebody, I'll say, hey, good to know. Walk the other way. I'm not in the mindset that I have to continue to beat somebody down with my opinion to try and get them to come over to my side. You're free to have your opinion too. Great, let me have my freedom to have my opinion.
In 2016, there was a post that you placed. Germany puts out guide on how men from Mideast can assimilate. And your text that you wrote at the top, so why do Westerners need to tell men from the Middle East not to handle women like fresh meat? Assimilate? Not likely. Just this year, there are refugees from Afghanistan, a Muslim majority country, who local groups are helping to resettle in the Wenatchee Valley after they had to flee their own country. If you're commissioner, Shon, with a sentiment like that being expressed publicly, do those people need to feel unwelcome in Chelan County?
No, I think one of the words that we need to focus on right there is assimilate. If you're coming to our country and you want to be part of our lives and part of our culture, then assimilation is expected. If you still have some of the things that you did or was allowed in your country that you came from, I'm sorry, that's not allowed here, and we do have laws that are going to stop you from doing that and prohibiting you from doing that. But part of the American dream is to get a piece of the American pie, and coming to our country is definitely a gift. And I think that people that come here need to understand that and expect that we're going to hold you to American standards. And assimilate is the key word in that. Welcome to the United States, welcome to America, land of opportunity.
Many counties in Washington are sort of changing the way they conduct their elections for county commissioner. Right now, in the primary, people in the district voted for their candidate. Those people voted for you and for your opponent to advance to the general election. The general election is held countywide. Some of the arguments for changing that have been that it waters down the votes of certain minority groups. Do you think that Chelan County should, in the future, adopt a voting system that is either districted, entirely districted, where people within District 2 vote in District 2 for general and primary, or should it be at large? Is there a change that needs to happen there?
I don't think that it needs to change so much. And it's funny because my kids ask me, well, why do the cities get to vote for a county commissioner when they have the ability to elect a mayor
Smart kids.
that represents them? And I say, well, you have to think about the fact that each of the cities interact with the county either directly, whether that be through law enforcement or fire and protection or ambulance service. They need to be able to work together so the decisions that are made on a county level do affect the citizens inside the city that still get to vote for that county representative. And I think that's wise to be able to do that, because the things that we're going to do at a county level are going to affect the people in the city, whether they commute from one town to another. You're eventually going to touch county land. And that relationship needs to be nurtured in each of the cities as well. So giving the people of the city a voice to vote for that representative when they get outside the city limits is important as well. So I don't think a big change is needed in our area, especially for our population.
You'd like to be the commissioner from District 2 for Chelan County?
Correct. Yeah.
Shon Smith, Republican, running for Chelan County Board of Commissioners. Thanks a lot for joining us today.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
You're watching the NCW Life channel.